Nancy Drew, The Secret of Shadow Ranch by Carolyn Keene. Read for you by Brandon Reece Taylor. Chapter 1. A Curious Stranger. "Here I am, girls," exclaimed Nancy Drew as she hugged her two best friends. "All set for an exciting adventure at Shadow Ranch?" "I hope you had a good flight," said Bess Marvin. The pretty, slightly plump blonde was not smiling as usual. Nancy wondered why. "Are we glad to see you," remarked George Fane, an attractive tomboyish girl with short dark hair. She glanced anxiously around the crowded waiting room in the Phoenix Air Terminal. "Let's go where we can talk." Nancy looked at the cousins with keen blue eyes. "What's the matter? Is something wrong?" Bess bit her lip, then burst out, "Oh, Nancy, we can't stay. We all have to go home tomorrow." "But why?" asked Nancy, astonished. "Because there's a mystery at the ranch," George said bluntly, "and Uncle Ed thinks it's not safe for us to be here." Bess put in, "But Nancy, if you could convince Uncle Ed you can solve the case, maybe he'd let us stay. However, I'm not sure I want to. It's really pretty frightening." "I can't wait to hear what the mystery is," Nancy said excitedly. George insisted on collecting Nancy's suitcases at the baggage claim section. "But save the mystery until I come back," George said, cast at the two girls. Tyshawn heard Nancy was a trim figure in her olive green knit with matching shoes. Beige accessories and knitting bag completed her costume. Bess wore a pale blue cotton, which showed off her deep suntan to advantage. While they walked, Bess explained that her uncle had decided at breakfast to send the girls home. At his insistence, George had made reservations for a flight the next day. "We told him what a wonderful detective you are and begged him to let you try to solve the mystery. He said it was too dangerous for a girl." "George phoned you, but you'd already left," Bess sighed. "It's a shame. We could have had a super vacation." The three girls had grown up together in River Heights and had shared many exciting adventures. Several weeks before, Bess and George's aunt and uncle, Edward and Elizabeth Rowley, owners of Shadow Ranch, had invited them to spend the summer in Arizona. The Rowleys had easily been persuaded to include Nancy in the invitation. Nancy's father, Carson Drew, a famous lawyer, had given his consent to the trip, but had asked his daughter to delay her departure for a week in order to do some work for him. Previously, Nancy had helped him solve the secret of the old clock. It was her first case and had led to many other dangerous assignments, the most recent of which was the mystery at Lilac Inn. Now the young sleuth was eager to hear about the mystery at Shadow Ranch. She and Bess strolled into the sandwich shop and made their way among the crowded tables to a small one in the corner. As they seated themselves, a slender grey-haired man in a tan suit sat down at the next table. Nancy placed her knitting bag on the floor between his chair and her own. "What are you making?" Bess asked, nodding toward the bag. "A sweater for Dad," Nancy replied. "I hope to finish it for his birthday. Originally I bought the wool for myself, but he admired the colour, so I decided to surprise him and knit a sweater for him. Do you think he'll like the style?" "He'll love it." "Not to change the subject, but there are some handsome cowboys at the ranch," Bess remarked. As she told Nancy of the fun she and George had been having, Bess grew more cheerful. Just then George joined them. Besides the brown linen purse that matched her dress, she now carried a big thermos jug. "I had a porter put your bags in the car," she told Nancy, "and I brought this thermos back. We have to fill it with water for the drive across the desert. We started with 2 jugs. Bess and I drank up the water in one on the way here." When the waitress came to take the girls' orders, Nancy and George chose soft drinks while Bess studied the menu. "This mystery has me so upset," she declared, "that my appetite is gone." Then she added, "I'll have a double chocolate sundae with walnuts." Nancy and George grinned. "Poor girl," George said. "She's wasting away." Bess looked sheepish. "Never mind me," she said. "Start telling Nancy about the mystery." George tugged her chair closer and bent forward. "About 2 months ago," she began, "Uncle Ed and Aunt Bet acquired Shadow Ranch in payment of a debt. They'd always wanted to be ranchers, so they moved there and began working the property. But for the past month, there have been so many accidents that they've decided the ranch is being sabotaged." "At first they weren't sure," Bess took up the story, "but after last night, Uncle Ed said there was no doubt." "What happened?" Nancy asked. "The phantom horse appeared," replied George. Nancy's eyes sparkled with interest. "A phantom? Tell me." Bess shivered. "It's the weirdest thing, all glowing white and filmy. We saw it running across what we call the big meadow." George added, "Shorty Steele, he's one of the ranch hands, says it's supposed to be the ghost of the horse which belonged to Dirk Valentine, an old-time outlaw." "There's a very romantic legend about him," Bess said. "He was the sweetheart of Frances Humber, daughter of the local sheriff, who was the original owner of Shadow Ranch. One night, when Dirk Valentine came there to see Frances, the sheriff shot him and killed him. As he lay dying, the desperado put a curse on the Humber property, vowing that his horse would haunt Shadow Ranch, and whenever it appeared, destruction would follow." "That curse came true," George said grimly. "This morning, Uncle had found one of his windmills had been pulled down." Nancy looked thoughtfully. "Did the phantom horse make any sound?" "No," replied George, "but just before it appeared, we heard a weird whistling. The ranchers say the outlaw always called his horse that way." "The phantom horse must be a trick, of course," Nancy said. "It sounds as if someone is trying to scare your aunt and uncle off their property." As she spoke, Nancy became aware that the man at the next table was listening intently to the conversation. "But why?" Bess broke off, as she felt Nancy's foot nudge hers under the table. George caught Nancy's warning glance and also understood. Just then, the waitress brought their food, and the girls chatted lightly of other subjects. When they finished and their check had come, Nancy reached for her knitting bag and gave a cry of alarm. "What's the matter?" Bess asked. "My bag. I can't find it." George exclaimed. "I'll bet that man who sat next to us took it. He's gone too."